Here's the real question, I promise. Does the addict deserve a voice?
All right. Great question, Coby. Before we answer that question, we have a review here. It says, Seeking Hope. I highly recommend this podcast for anyone seeking hope and struggling with the pain of betrayal and the shame and sense of loss when facing addiction. And not only sexual addiction, simply by showing up each week, Coby and Ashlynn live by example the path to emerging from the desolate shame of broken relationship to the hope of something new and better. Their open and vulnerable conversations have not normalized betrayal and have not normalized betrayal and addiction for me, but rather have made it believable that there is a path back. They have provided tools, real and useful tools, to take care of my own stuff, clean up my side of the street, so to speak. They also have provided me a sense of not being alone. I am so grateful.
Well, thank you. I like that, the belief that there is something more. So it's definitely a part of the process, right, Brannon?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all about hope. Once you believe it, you hope it, you can start to see it. So good stuff. All right. I think the topic that we have for today is actually a very, very, very important and also tricky and a little bit misunderstood. And so whatever we say today, I would say listen to the end, because I think it's important to understand this topic in full context. So, the question that Coby said is, does the addict deserve a voice? I would say that not only does the addict deserve a voice, it is imperative and essential to healing for him and for the relationship for him to have a voice. What do you guys think?
I 100% agree. And yet this was not something I think either of us maybe asked specifically. It was more like we were maybe asking or seeking the not symptoms, but we wanted each other to show up different. And this happened to be one of the ways that allowed that to happen. So whether I know sometimes people get hung up on labels. So you may not be the addict or you may not be a guy. So listen with your heart open, hear what fits your story, and throw out the rest, and stick with us, like Brannon said.
Yeah.
I think that this is. I think what's important to take a step back and to frame as context for this episode, Brannon, is I'm certain. In fact, I know that I had a long season of life where I didn't think that I had a voice and that my voice didn't count. And to sum it up, it's like, who am I? What leg do I have to stand on? I'm that guy. So why am I really going to pipe up with, think like with my opinion, or to push back on things, or to represent what I think when I'm the one who's destroyed that? That was the context that I had for years before we started recovery, and certainly for a long time into recovery. But what was did you have anything along the same vein, Ashlynn, of like, who are you?
Oh yeah.
Pipe up?
Well, especially in those beginnings when you're afraid to show any sort of healing or feeling better because you're afraid your partner who has betrayed and hurt you will think that you're okay. And so for me to, as much as I wanted Coby to have his own voice and to really figure out who he is so that he could fix and figure out what those roots are that were causing him to act out in the way he did, it was also scary of like, no, don't do that because it's changing the dance. And I actually don't know that dance, and neither do you. So we were fumbling and it was messy. And
now these weren't conscious thoughts that we were thinking.
No,
this is what was really kind of going on under the surface for both of us, because I didn't know how to have a voice, like at all. That wasn't modeled to me. My dad was very passive, we'll call it. And my mom ran the show. And so I always saw really an emasculated man as a partner, like a father figure in our house was, unless he was totally losing his mind angry, then in which case my mom would gear down and let him, speak his piece, etc. So that's the context I think that we had going into it. Is that normal, Brannon? Is that abnormal?
Yeah. So it's so I see things go in two different directions. So when discovery happens, between in the relationship, the betrayer just feels like they're unworthy of love, that they're bad, they're out of control, they're compulsive, they feel like they're disgusting, horrible, perverted monsters, who don't really deserve to be seen or heard. And so it goes two different directions. One, they show up in pride and force of, I'm going to not attach to you because I'm going to be big and mean and verbally abusive and just force you into loving me. Or they show up in another form of weakness, which is compliance, which is, I'm going to not know who I am at all. I don't trust myself. You're going to tell me who I am and who I need to be and how I need to be, so that you'll love me, so that I'll be lovable. So I won't show up authentic. I won't show up as me, but I'll show up as avoiding any conflict and avoiding any problems so that you do love me.
Brannon, can I ask a follow-up to that though? Does that include the addict saying, I'm not going to push back or stand up for what I think. I'm just going to do what I'm told. I'm going to be in compliance both to their partner, but also to their therapist?
Yeah, to church leaders, to therapists, to everybody, to just like show up and do what you're told to do.
Interesting.
And there's a big problem with this. Huge problem.
It's scary. It's very, from my opinion, like very, very scary.
You mean, to be honest?
No. Well, that's scary too, especially when you've never been. But it's to be like, what's really scary to me is like, okay, we have a person who is complying, but we've got no idea what they're actually thinking. And that's scary.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. Here's the, like, I'm passionate about this, and here's why. Because it cuts to the very core of what recovery is. Okay. If the problem with addiction is not the acting out, it's not the masturbating or going to strip clubs or whatever you're doing, right? The problem with addiction is that you've lost a sense of self. You don't know who you are. You don't trust yourself. You don't love yourself. You don't know that you're a powerful person, who's absolutely worthy of love, who is unconditionally loved. You've lost that. You've lost that. So when discovery happens or it starts to come to light, if you're told that you suck and you should shut up, just shut up. You suck. You're horrible. Shut up and comply. Shut up and comply. We're feeding that very narrative that got you there in the first place. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Now, here's the other side to the coin. And Ashlynn, I want you to kind of speak to this. You already kind of did. You've been in this relationship with this person who has manipulated you, has omitted things, has lied. Then all of a sudden you're supposed to listen to their voice. You're supposed to want to empower them to speak up and to have conflict with you and to be boundaried and all these things. No, thank you. Right? I'd rather kind of just take this over on my own.
Yeah.
And if he's showing up weak and compliant and all these things, I can control him. That's nice, because then I don't have to actually listen to him and try to trust him again. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
No, yeah. And I think that's how we started out. And it doesn't, if you're in that right now, that you can't get out of that little dance. But I know that, in your head, life was so out of control.
Yeah.
Not even in my head. It really was out of control. Right. And so when we start to find okay, I have some ground, we're going to do this thing called recovery and go to therapy, and I'm going to go to group and do these things. it felt easier to say, these are the things we're doing. And here's a little bit of control here and compliance.
Hop on board, buddy. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the compliance part, I think, was absolutely part of our story. So you can have shame in that or you can't, but like we moved on from it. So there's no shame in that was part of how we did this.
Which Ashlynn is the totally normal response and reaction. Most couples go through something like that.
Yeah.
Where and where it's like the spouse becomes God in a lot of ways. You dictate my worth. I want to please you. You tell me what to do. And yeah.
Well, and Coby, you would say like my okayness was dependent upon Ashlynn or God. Like I was almost one in the same.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which I didn't understand that, but I do now. It was hard, Brannon, I think for me, he would show up in those moments of having a voice, little things like I was a name caller. And when I would name call and he started to push back on that, you can be mad, but that is not okay. It's not okay to call me names or it's not okay to whatever. It was
you're a name caller, huh, Ashley?
I was.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's
but let me finish real quick.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I would show up in that space. And as much as I wanted to, I myself didn't want to be a name caller, but I had done it. And so I had I was embarrassed and ashamed. Right. And then he calls me out on it and saying, that's not okay anymore. I'm not going to stand for that. It was like, yay, he like knows who he is and he's standing up for himself. But also at the same time, like, how dare you?
Yes.
How dare you tell me that I'm a bad person for this little thing when you've done these big things? So as long as I could reality check and stay out of the comparison and just say like, I'm going to zoom out. And the zoom out version for me was I'm here because I love Coby. And there's more good in Coby than bad. And if I'm willing to, like at our review, like stay in my own side of the street and clean up my own stuff, and he does the same and we end up at the same place, that's great. And so I'm going to try to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt, step into a little bit of that, like, I'm going to test this out and it's probably going to be messy and it might even hurt, but I'm going to test it because I didn't want to have regrets and go back and say, I was just mean and he hurt me. And so I deserved to show up the way I did.
Right.
I really just either way wanted to say I did my best and I still failed and we still hurt each other's feelings and say things wrong, but we keep trying. We're good at trying.
Right. Coby, you said something earlier about your dad and you used that word emasculated. I really do think this whole topic is about masculinity and healthy masculinity. And I think I actually love the story you just told, Ashlynn, because Coby, when you're calling him names and he steps into I'm sorry, but that's not who I am and that doesn't work for me. He's actually stepping into some strength. And when an addict or a betrayer has a voice, what we're not saying is that they go, from being this compliant doormat to this pompous jerk who doesn't care about what you think because I'm going to tell you what is. Stepping into your strength, stepping into healthy masculinity is knowing where your partner stops and you begin, loving your partner, having empathy for your partner, really caring deeply about their feelings and empathizing with them and listening to them, but also being able to be boundaried and be able to say, no, that's not who I am, or no, that doesn't work for me. So an addict with a voice is a person with a lot of strength and a lot of love toward their partner. It's a person who can create safety. Now, I want to tell you guys two different scenarios really quick. I heard this morning, and then I heard another one on Friday. This wife said, yeah, my husband's he's different now because he's doing everything that you're telling him. So I was like, okay, what's he doing? Well, he's just like trying to dig down to my feelings and blah, blah, blah. And just being, but it just
blah, blah.
It just feels fake, And I was like, okay, so he's being Mr. Nice Guy. And then this morning I met with this woman. She's like, yeah, my husband, he's just doing everything you're telling him to do. And I was like, well, what's he doing? Well, he's just saying, this is my truth. Get over it. This is how it is. And he doesn't care at all about my feelings.
So there's a big difference here.
Yeah. What am I really saying? Coby, what am I really saying? Help these guys out. Like, what am I really saying here?
We're the swing to this is who I am, so just deal with it. That would be an example of a swing from codependence to independence.
Yes.
Where I'm going to do me because I'm tired of having you do me, and I'm going to do me now, and I'm going to separate myself from the emotions that you feel, your thoughts, your perspective, and I'm just going to go over here and really I'm okay just doing me because I don't care about where you are anymore and what your thoughts are about me.
Yeah.
Which is equal parts unhealthy from the other side of the spectrum.
Well,
Yes.
it almost feels like when we have done that, Coby and I have both swung on that pendulum, back and forth.
Many times, like it was a park swing.
Yes. But it feels like you go from selfishness, right? From this like addictive or whatever behavior, selfish, to over here again to selfish, to this, like, I don't care about our partnership or what agreements or how you feel. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just going to focus on my side. And it's kind of this hard message because we do say a lot here on the podcast, do your own work, stay in your own lane, but it isn't to the point of be cold and be, unkind and disconnected and those things. It's not as cut and dry as we make that sound, I guess.
Yeah. I was talking to my group recently and a couple of guys were kind of like, they're kind of rolling their eyes because they're like, yeah, well, there's that, Brannon's empathy thing. And they're kind of talking that way. And I was like, no. And I stopped. I was like, no, like, I'm actually serious. Empathy is so important. But in order to empathize with somebody, you really have to be able to be present with them. And when I speak my truth, if I only just speak my truth with no feeling, I'm just logical. I am not a healthily attached person. Not. I can't create intimacy that way. If I only try to comply and be empathetic and never speak my truth, then I can't create intimacy that way. So there's an equation here that speaking my truth and caring and having empathy, those two things together on both sides, both partners, that's what creates intimacy. That's what gives intimacy a chance.
Well, and we talk about energy, Brannon, you're great about bringing that up and how it shifts and feels different. That was definitely something I noticed in this dynamic as Coby, started to find his voice, and he's done it throughout the years in different arenas. Right. And so sometimes it's been a lot easier for him to share, but also with empathy and love. And other times it has been the like guns blazing. This is who I am.
Right.
Don't care about you. And
Right.
it's messy and it's hard. But we've always been able to find our way back because I think it's for me, like I said in the beginning, it's that zooming out. We're in a partnership. And if we really are doing this alongside each other, which I know not all of us have, it is like you have to include that other person in finding that part of yourself. This is who I am, and I want to share it with you.
Absolutely.
And I can do it in a way that doesn't push you away, but I can also acknowledge I don't know how to do it. I'm doing it messy and I'm figuring it out. And I was 40 years old before I started to really, really dig and say, this is who I am. Like, these are my core values.
Yes.
And it really has pushed me to figure those things out. And yes, recovery along the way has been able to push those things out of me. And I would say the same for you, Coby. It's like every year we find little parts of us that haven't had that voice, that haven't been there.
Right.
So it's not this like, just show up with this one time and find your truth and who you are.
Consistency.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it can change. You can change your mind and you can say, oh my gosh, like that was who I was a year ago. But Coby and I aren't the same people we were a month ago.
Right.
And that's the part of the process is you just keep growing and figuring out more about your own self and what works and what no longer works.
Right.
I think it's the best. Sorry, Brandon. I'm just going to throw this in there real quick.
I have a question for you after you say this.
Okay.
Oh.
So I just want to make the statement that it's really, really imperative for the person who has betrayed to hear what I'm about to say. The best way for you to develop intimacy with your partner is to first know who you are so they can know who you are.
Yes.
And that is scary, scary, because I always used God and church to tell me who I am. I used the notion of parents, of coaches, of professors, and times of bosses, work to tell me who I was, or to tell me how good I was, or how good I was based upon how I could comply. But I really didn't understand that I had to know myself, that I had to accept who I was in order for Ashlynn to fully accept who I was.
Yep.
And that's not a done deal for us. Like, we're still in this process of unraveling, the early childhood wounds and such. But in order for Ashlynn, for you to love me most, you have to know who I am, which means I've got to be vulnerable enough to say, okay, this is me.
Well, Coby, I want to say sex addiction's an interesting thing because, you think about it. Why is somebody drawn to sex as their addiction? Why is that their thing of choice? If you stop and pause and you think about that, well, addiction, we know it fills a void. Addiction, they say, is somebody's attempt to find God. And so if addiction is somebody's attempt to find God, then why, let's take a man. Why is this man caught up in sex addiction? Well, the fact of the matter is the acceptance of a woman, the acceptance of that to that man is so powerful and he's sexualized his shame, right? So it's so powerful and amazing that that the addiction itself is trying to get this acceptance through sex, through femininity, through the woman, and so it kind of makes it really hard for when recovery starts to happen. Coby, you said it perfectly. What real recovery is knowing who you are and knowing yourself, independent of trying to get it from a woman or through sex. And what's fascinating about it is, there's these paradoxes everywhere in recovery. When you detach from your partner, that's when you can create connection, right? So when you detach,
1,000%.
Yeah, you guys get that. A lot of people won't understand what I just said.
Yeah,
you guys totally understand what I just said.
Yeah, explain, because they're probably thinking disconnect, but it's detachment.
Yeah, when you detach all of your need to consume them and use them for your okayness and your self-worth, you detach all of that and you find that elsewhere. You gain an understanding of that some other way. Then you're good to go, because you can be boundaried in a healthy way, and you can create all kinds of deep, real trust, safety, and intimacy in that relationship.
Because that gives your partner an opportunity to know who you really are and to develop the way that they see you, to develop the way that they attach to you, to develop the way that they understand the actual you rather than the compliant you. And I think for me, that was you totally spoke. You shared without speaking detail. You shared who I was, because as soon as Ashlynn and I were engaged, I was done playing football. As soon as we got married, Ashlynn promptly told me, "Okay, I'm not actually going to we're not going to be we're not going to be a teacher. We're not going to be a principal because that's not what I want. And I was like, okay, I'll just give that up for you. And that was just us in our youth as much as anything. Right. But I was like,
but by the way, that's not Ashlynn's fault.
no, oh,
Right?
1,000%,
Yeah.
1,000%. That's, I mean,
But to you in that moment, you just gave in. You
it
just
was
Right.
like, okay,
along.
I guess I'll figure something else out because Ashlynn doesn't like it. So for me,
You're doing
it
the Jim
was,
Gaffigan voice. I like it.
I was. Oh my gosh, I totally was. That's hilarious.
Oh,
Ellie listens to him every night before she falls
Yeah.
asleep. But that was, in fact, even when I studied in school, PR, I studied PR and interpersonal communications because Ashlynn's friend was like, oh my gosh, Ashlynn, Coby would be so good at PR. Have him just do this. And she just kind of, here's what it is basically. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll just do that. And so I didn't know that I needed to know who I was.
Yes.
I didn't know that I needed to have my own identity. All I was literally hung up on, was this idea of I've got to be the quote unquote good husband. I've got to be the good provider. I've got to be the good partner who Ashlynn will love.
Okay, here's my question that I had for you, Coby. This fits right perfectly here. When you got to be this good partner, and you're not becoming a teacher, and you're going into PR because she wants you to, and what are the consequences of that? What does it start to do to you, and what does it start to do in terms of your view of your partner?
Well, I lose track. Like the lights go out more and more on me being able to see my own identity, the further down someone else's road I go.
Oh, that's a good point, Coby. So
like
the
that.
more you get lost more in the identity that everybody else is giving to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes. And so it's harder for me to come back to who I actually am because I can't even see it. So I think it's really as much as it's as much a visual thing as anything. Whereas like I really I didn't understand internally who I was,
Mhm.
but moreover, the only thing that was around me were the things that came because of what Ashlynn wanted me to be. I
Yeah.
couldn't see that there was an option for me to have my own me,
Yeah.
to have my own identity. It was just like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the byproducts of it. That's one of the things that's really challenging about it, is you just don't know. You just become farther and farther from your own truth.
When here's a question for you. So you're seeking validation and worth from her, and complying,
Totally.
and not having boundaries.
From her, from God, from church, yeah.
Does that make you hate her in a way, or resent her?
Yeah.
Like just really not like her?
For sure. There was, and then that's a really great and searching question, because I really saw in moments of frustration and anger, my dad have resentments, big raging resentments towards my mom.
Yeah.
And I, just looking back now, it's like I didn't realize that was the case, but that was totally me too, where it was like I would resent, this aspect or this aspect of my relationship with Ashlynn, because I was being compelled to do the thing or do some things that I didn't necessarily want to do,
Yeah.
but I
Mhm.
still did them anyways. And
Well-
of course, when I'm not boundaried and saying, actually, this is where I stop and this is where you start, so I'm not going to do that, that never existed at all.
Right.
And that's why resentments just raged
Yep.
from within me, because I resented the fact that I didn't know that I was doing her, but I had zero clue who I was.
Yep.
Yeah. So a part of that I hope you guys heard was, if you have resentments right now, slow down. That's where boundaries are not had, right? That's where
Yep.
you're letting that person take over, and there's the feeling of like, "Ugh, I don't have
Yep.
control over who I am and how I'm showing up." So
Ashlynn, I got to drive that home, what you just
Do
said.
it.
If you have resentments, then what you might be sitting back thinking is they suck.
Yeah.
Like that they're hurting me. I got to comply. No. If you have resentments, then you're lacking the fortitude and the strength to be an honest, boundaried person in that relationship. And so instead of sitting back in resentment, work on yourself, love yourself enough so that you can show up honest with that person.
Here.
Yes. And I will say this, we talked about energy for a second. I didn't finish my point. I got off track. Coby showed up differently with his energy, with his posture. It was like, oh, I remember telling you last year, like, Coby, this is what I always saw you as, is like, I'm here and I'm standing in my own secure place. I'm not leaning into you. I'm not leaning into someone else. I'm here.
Yes.
And this is who I am. And you continue to show up in that energy and posture. And it's not this angry and mean. It started that way. I won't lie.
Guys, it totally did.
It was a lot of like, this is who I am. I just flipped everyone off.
That was
But
totally me
that's-
too.
Yeah.
But that's where it started, and that's not where it's continued, because it required me also saying, hey, I can accept that this is your truth, and I am doing my own stuff to make sure that I can stay in my truth, but this doesn't work. Right.
Right.
And
Well, I
that's
think-
the beauty
go
of
ahead.
it. Sorry, Brandon, but that's the beauty of this. And this is what I'm hoping that all of you who are listening can understand that things can be. Now, Ashlynn and I are not there. We are definitely still on our journey with this. But what this is it's this beautiful dance of Ashlynn and I being two separate individuals, very different people, and sharing such an intimate relationship without compromising our own identity,
Yes.
without compromising any part of who we are. That's
Coby, I just want to say, and when we started the podcast, I don't know, 3 years ago, almost 4 years
Almost
ago,
4,
a long
yeah.
time ago. That's like all of high school for me. 4 years. Wow.
We made it.
But when we started the podcast 4 years ago, I've seen you guys make major shifts in this area.
Mhm.
And I mean, maybe when we started the podcast, it was like, yeah, we're so like, we got some sobriety going. There's some trust being built and stuff. But I've seen you guys accelerate in terms of intimacy, trust, connection, on this one principle. And it was, Coby, when you did realize, oh my gosh, like I'm resentful toward Ashlynn because I'm unboundaried and I'm not being honest with her. And then actually having the courage, and this is where Coby's awesome, having the courage to actually start to step into that discomfort of being an authentic, boundaried, honest man. And I've seen massive shifts for you guys since then. So,
Yeah. And massive means hard and scary.
Yeah.
but good outcomes, right?
It
Yeah.
always is. And it always makes me laugh when Coby would come up and show him like, I'm scared to tell you that this is my truth. And some of the first ones, they were like, oh, this is scary, because he made it feel scary. Right. And then a lot of them, I was
knowing
like,
who I was scary.
Yeah.
Truth.
At
but a
first
lot
it was
of
really
it-
scary.
a lot of it, I was like, well, okay, cool. That's who you are. Like,
Thanks for
it
sharing that.
Yes. And it wasn't this like, oh, now I don't love you, which is what he had built up in his
Yeah.
head.
That he needed
Yeah.
to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, those are very kind words, and I'm grateful that you shared that. And it has been, man, for so many reasons. I totally know that place that I was in when we first started in Lucy's room on the ironing board, speaking into a snowball against some curtains that were doors for her closet. And I totally know, I just know that place of compliance. And I know, looking back, that I was really good at paying attention to what other people wanted from me. And I was clueless as to what I needed and wanted from me. And it's painful. And my road has been painful. And you've seen that, Brannon. And I know that Ashlynn has experienced that. And it's been so hard. But if you think about this, the way that I sort through the hard parts of this, of me finding out who I am and having my voice and being okay with it, is making up for decades of not knowing who it is. So whenever you compress time frames on something as foundational as your own identity and your own voice, it will be dreadfully hard
Yes.
and devastatingly uncomfortable. And sometimes that discomfort is a sustained season to be in, and we've had plenty of those.
For sure.
But despite having to address all those things, Ashlynn has stood by me because she has learned to love me for who I am, because I've put effort into trying to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
You're here, Ashlynn.
Yeah. We're right there with you guys. We're figuring out who we are as we go. And I will tell you this, I hope this wasn't discouraging to hear all of this, because it is a hard path to figure out who the heck you are, but it's also one of the most powerful paths to step into and to really figure out, who cares if you're 40 or 50 or 20, and to say, you know what, this is who I am. And I'm starting to feel at peace with who I am and with my past. I'm not ashamed of, the path I may have taken to get here. It is what it is. And Coby and I may have taken a longer path to find ourselves and our own healing than some of you listening. And I'm okay with that. Am I jealous of some of you? Yes, but I'm okay with it.
One last thought. You cannot build trust. You cannot rebuild trust. I know a lot of people want to rebuild trust in their relationship. You cannot do it without honesty. Compliance won't get you there. It will never, ever get you there. Honesty will. Sometimes honesty is uncomfortable. And so learning how to be honest is the way to rebuild trust. And by the way, you guys, the title of this episode was, does the addict deserve a voice? The addict needs to have a voice in order to be an integrous person in the relationship. And the partner also deserves a voice. And both partners together having a voice, that's where a healthy relationship it lives. So
yes.
thanks for listening, you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks for being here, guys. Peace out.